For the hypothesis, I want us to be painfully specific. If we move the SIGNUP ETA above the fold, trial starts will increase by 5% because users will see it earlier and need less scrolling. Not make the page better. That's how experiments become expensive fan fiction.
Yeah. Specific is fine. But if we only optimize for trial starts, we might get junk signups. I'd rather pair it with activation or day one retention. Otherwise, we win the dashboard and lose the product.
Exactly. Which is why I want a primary metric and a guardrail. Primary, trial starts. Guardrail, activated users within 24 hours, maybe refund or bounce rate if this were checkout. We need one North Star for the experiment, not a committee.
I can live with that, but the metric has to be sensitive enough. If the effect is tiny, we'll sit there arguing about noise like it's a religion.
Then we size it properly, and we don't change 5 things at once. I still remember that one test where someone just tweaked copy, and somehow the whole funnel shifted, miraculously, on a Friday.
Of course, it was a Friday. People save their chaos for Fridays.
So once the hypothesis and metrics are set, the next thing is randomization. We need to decide whether we're assigning users purely at the user level, or splitting by account, device, whatever actually matches the experience.
User level is cleaner, but only if users don't bounce between devices and get exposed twice. Otherwise, the random part becomes performance art.
Right, and we should probably hash on stable IDs so assignment is deterministic. No cookie-based lottery, if we can avoid it. I don't want people seeing variant A on mobile and B on desktop, and then us pretending that's science.
And then there's sample ratio mismatch. The classic we sent 50-50 and somehow got 53-47 because one bucket is filtering out traffic.
Which usually means instrumentation, eligibility, or assignment bugs. Or someone quietly forgot to exclude bots and test accounts.
I've seen a 90-10 test drift to 87-13 because one variant loaded slower. Nothing like measuring a UX change and discovering the randomizer has opinions.
Exactly. So we need to monitor allocation early, not after the experiment is done. If the buckets are off, I'd rather stop and debug than base decisions on contaminated data.
Agreed. If the split's wrong, the whole thing starts smelling like a bad spreadsheet.
Which brings us back to metrics. We should choose one primary metric that decides the experiment, and a couple of secondary metrics to explain the trade-offs.
Primary has to be the thing tied closest to the business goal. If we're testing sign-up flow, don't pick button clicks just because they're easy to move.
Exactly. Button clicks are nice for diagnosis, but they're not the decision. Secondary metrics can tell us whether we accidentally improved curiosity and harmed conversion, or increased starts but lowered completion.
Or raised starts by attracting the wrong people. I've seen that happen. The chart looks great until support starts waving from across the room.
So maybe primary is completed trials, secondary is trial starts, completion rate, and a guardrail like support contacts or payment failures. That way we know if we're trading quality for volume.
And we need to predefine them. If we wait until after the results, someone will suddenly discover a more meaningful metric that just happens to agree with them.
That would never happen in this company.
Sure. And I'm the one who believes in unicorns.
Once the metrics are locked, sample size and power come next. If we don't know the minimum detectable effect, we're basically guessing how long to leave the test running.
And guessing usually means ending it too early because someone gets impatient.
Or too late because more data is always better, which is how experiments turn into seasonal events. We need to pick alpha, power, baseline rate, and a realistic effect size.
Realistic is the annoying part. People love saying they expect a 20% lift from changing a label.
I know. I always ask, how big would the effect have to be for us to care? If the answer is tiny, then we need a massive sample. If the sample is impossible, maybe the test isn't worth running.
And if traffic is low, we should stop pretending every idea deserves an A/B test. Some things need directional analysis, or a broader rollout.
Exactly. Vianel. Now. Exactly. I'd rather have a well-powered test that takes longer than a quick one that tells us nothing. Random noise is very confident for something that doesn't know what it's doing.
That's basically half the internet.
Power also affects duration, which means we can't just run the test until somebody gets bored. We need enough time to cover normal weekly patterns at minimum.
Right. Weekdays and weekends behave differently. Mondays are always weird, like the product wakes up angry.
And if there are promotions, holidays, or payday effects, the experiment window has to account for that too. Otherwise, we end up comparing a calm Tuesday to a chaos Friday and calling it insight.
I hate when a test wins because one side happened to catch a promo email. That's not a result, that's weather.
Exactly. So we should set a minimum runtime, then check whether the sample size and business cycles are both covered before looking at results.
And no peaking every hour and renaming it monitoring. I know how this goes.
Peaking isn't the issue if we handle it correctly, but yes, repeated looks can mess with conclusions. We need discipline about when we read the data.
Discipline in engineering. Bold choice of strategy.
It's worked before, despite everyone's best efforts. And that's where guardrails matter. We can be excited about uplifts, but if latency, error rate, or support tickets move the wrong way, the test is not healthy.
Especially latency. Users forgive a lot less than we do. A feature that converts better but feels slower is just a slower way to annoy people.
Exactly. Guardrails protect the parts of the system we don't want to sacrifice. Revenue, sure, but also reliability, churn, and compliance if it applies.
I'd add cancellation rate for anything subscription-based. A win today that increases churn next month is a bad trade.
That's the risk management angle. Define what failure looks like before the experiment starts. If a guardrail crosses a threshold, we stop or roll back instead of rationalizing it.
And thresholds should be concrete, not if it feels bad. We've both seen teams turn vibes into governance.
Guilty as charged. But yes, we need clear stop-loss rules and someone responsible for watching them.
Preferably someone who doesn't disappear when the graphs turn red.
That would simplify a lot of meetings.